For 5 years, Ethan Stone spoiled me, making me the envy of every woman in the city. He remembered I didn't eat spicy food, that I hated noise, and that I preferred simple, understated white dresses. He even had white noise machines ready in advance, knowing I'd have trouble sleeping on rainy nights. Everyone said he was madly in love with me. Until that night, when I saw a list titled My Dearest in his notes app. That's when I realized I didn't actually dislike spicy food, and I was never afraid of noise. Every single item on that list, which he had memorized by heart, was about his first love. For 5 years, he had merely been meticulously carving me into another woman's image. Now, the dream was over. Mr. Stone, I'm not going to be your stand-in anymore. The auction house glittered with dazzling lights. My eyes were glued to the ruby necklace on stage. It was the main item of the night, and something I'd coveted for a long time. 50 million. Ethan Stone, next to me, raised his paddle, his voice deep and cool. My heart fluttered. I turned to him. Ethan, are you really buying it for me? Ethan didn't even spare me a glance. He stood up and, from the hostess, accepted not the ruby necklace, but a diamond bracelet. I froze. He had just bought that bracelet for 60 million. Ethan casually handed the ornate box containing the diamond bracelet to his assistant behind him. Deliver this to the Willow Creek estate immediately. She's a light sleeper. Don't ring the doorbell. Just give it to the butler. The assistant nodded respectfully, then quickly left. I watched the assistants retreating back, my heart sinking little by little. The Willow Creek estate. That was where Sophia Gray had been staying since she returned to the country. Ethan finally turned to me, giving me a look. He looked at my plain white evening gown, completely unadorned, and his brows slightly relaxed. That ruby is too flashy. It doesn't suit you. Don't you always prefer simple and elegant things? His tone was matter-of-fact, as if stating an undeniable truth. I opened my mouth, but my throat felt like it was stuffed with cotton. I didn't like simple things. I loved bold reds, vibrant passion, and anything that sparkled. But 5 years ago, the first time I stood before him in a red dress, he frowned and said, "Too garish. Change it." After that, my closet only held black, white, and gray. My jewelry box only contained pearls and thin, plain bands. I thought that was the way he liked me. On the drive home, the silence in the car was suffocating. Ethan leaned back, closing his eyes to rest. Suddenly, his phone automatically connected to the car's Bluetooth. An obnoxious calendar reminder popped up on the screen. Thunderstorm tonight. Remember to remind her to drink hot milk and turn on white noise. My breath hitched. I turned to look out the window, and sure enough, a fine rain had begun to fall. But I was never afraid of thunder. I slept deeper than anyone during rainstorms. I didn't need white noise at all. Ethan suddenly opened his eyes, quickly dismissing the reminder on the screen. He offered no explanation, merely stating, "Just a work reminder." I looked at his perfect profile and suddenly felt incredibly estranged. Was it really just work? Late at night, Ethan was showering in the bathroom. The water rushed loudly. His phone, resting on the bedside table, lit up with a message notification. "Sophia, received the bracelet, it's beautiful. Thank you for remembering I like this style." I stared at the message and, as if compelled, picked up his phone. The password was his birthday. I had always known that, but I had never checked his phone, because I trusted him implicitly. Tonight, however, that trust felt like it had been eaten through. I tapped on his notes app. At the very top, there was a pinned folder named My Dearest. Inside, there was a long, detailed list. She doesn't like bright colors. Her clothes should be white. Her taste is light. She absolutely can't touch chili. She's afraid of noise. She dislikes crowded places. She's allergic to seafood. Be careful with meals. She gets scared during thunderstorms. Needs company. Every single item, every word, felt like a sharp knife stabbing into my eyes. I looked at these preferences he held as gospel. I was chilled to the bone, as if plunged into an ice cave.
You loved both.
I lived for spicy food. My favorite was all kinds of spicy dishes. I loved going to music festivals, loved screaming in the crowd. My favorite food was spicy seafood. I wasn't allergic at all. For 5 years, he had strictly followed this list, dictating my life. When I took him to a spicy restaurant, he'd coldly say, "Eating this isn't healthy. Didn't you say you disliked it?" When I wanted to go on a beach vacation, he'd say, "The beach is too noisy. Let's go to a private resort instead." I thought he was just controlling, just a bit arrogant. For love, I desperately suppressed my true nature to fit his rules. Only today did I understand. I wasn't being cherished. I was just being loved wrong. The person he loved was never me. He was merely carving Sophia's image onto me, stroke by stroke. The sound of the shower stopped. Ethan walked out, drying his hair. He glanced at the phone in my hand, and his face instantly darkened. Summer, who gave you permission to touch my phone? He strode over and snatched the phone away. There was no guilt in his tone, only offended fury. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking up at him. Ethan Stone, I'm not allergic to seafood. My voice trembled as I spoke each word. Ethan froze for a moment, then frowned. What's gotten into you in the middle of the night? Didn't you break out in a rash last time after that sushi place? I laughed, tears streaming down my face. That was from the raw cashew cream at that fancy vegan restaurant you insisted we go to. I told you many times I'm not allergic to seafood. I love spicy food. I love rubies. Ethan's gaze turned cold. Summerlin, are you throwing a tantrum over that necklace today? It's just a necklace. Tomorrow I'll have my assistant buy you 10 plain gold chains. Don't make a scene. I'm tired. He turned, tossed his phone onto the sofa, and got into bed, leaving me with only his cold back. I looked at his back and suddenly felt a wave of nausea. This was the man I had loved for 5 years. He didn't even know what I truly liked. He didn't even have the desire to understand me. The next morning, I went to my jewelry design studio. I'm a jewelry designer. But in these 5 years of marriage, my work had become increasingly scarce, and my style more and more monotonous. All minimalist, simple, lifeless lines. As soon as I walked into the studio, Mia, my assistant, rushed over. Summer, this is bad. Mr. Stone canceled the media pre-interview for the International Jewelry Exhibition next month. I stopped abruptly. Why? Mia's face was grim. Mr. Stone's secretary called to say you don't like being in the limelight, don't like being surrounded by too many people. He said such noisy occasions weren't suitable for you, and asked the organizers to withdraw your name. I stood there, my fingertips digging deep into my palms. That was the big exhibition I'd been preparing for an entire year. I'd pulled countless all-nighters for this exhibition, designing a collection of colored gemstones. I wanted to use this opportunity to rediscover the radiant person I once was. But Ethan Stone, based on a single line in his notes app, "She's afraid of noise," had casually crushed all my hard work. He didn't just want to control my life. He wanted to strangle my career. Just then, the studio door opened. Ethan walked in. Beside him was Sophia Gray, dressed in a simple white dress, looking delicate and fragile. The atmosphere in the studio instantly dropped to freezing point. Mia and the other employees exchanged glances, not daring to breathe. Ethan surveyed my studio, a slight frown on his face. Why is this place such a mess? He turned to Sophia, his voice immediately softening. Sophia, you've just returned. You want to open an art gallery, and I think this location is perfect. Summer doesn't really need this much space anyway. Why don't we just give half of it to you? I stared at Ethan in disbelief. This was my studio. It was a place I'd saved up for and bought myself before we got married. How dare he decide, with a single sentence, to give half of it to his first love? Sophia gently tugged on Ethan's sleeve, smiling graciously. Ethan, let's not. Don't make Summer feel awkward. As she spoke, she browsed the display cabinets. Suddenly, her gaze stopped at a glass case. Inside was the centerpiece of my recently completed colored gemstone collection, an exaggerated, wildly styled ring set with a top-grade pigeon blood ruby. Sophia's eyes lit up. Ethan, this ring is so unique. Ethan walked over, glanced at it, and his frown deepened. The color is too intense. It doesn't suit your delicate style. Sophia bit her lip, looking a little hurt. But I really like it. Ethan turned to me and said in a condescending tone, Summer, wrap this ring up and give it to Sophia as a welcome-back gift. Your overly flamboyant designs don't sell anyway. You might as well do someone a favor. I stood there, feeling all the blood rush to my head. No. I coldly spat out the single word. Ethan's face instantly darkened. Summer, don't be so petty. Sophia isn't feeling well. Can't you just indulge her a little? I walked to the display cabinet and locked the glass cover. Ethan Stone, this is my passion project. It's not a prop for you to use to flatter other people. Want to give a gift? Go buy one yourself. Sophia's eyes instantly welled up, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Summer. I didn't know this ring was so important to you. Ethan, let's go. I don't want it anymore. Ethan protectively put his arm around Sophia's shoulder. He turned to me, his eyes filled with utter disgust. Summerlin, why have you become so petty and mean-spirited? You truly disappoint me. With that, he shielded Sophia and walked out of the studio without looking back. I watched their retreating backs and suddenly burst out laughing. laughing until tears streamed down my face. Petty and mean-spirited? For him, I had turned myself into a soulless puppet. In the end, in his eyes, I was just a jealous woman who wouldn't even give a ring to his first love. The silence that settled over the studio after the door clicked shut was absolute. It was the kind of silence that didn't just occupy space. It pressed against the eardrums like rising water. Summer stood perfectly still beside the glass display case. Her fingertips, still cold from the metal lock, slowly curled into her palms. Across the room, Mia and the two junior designers were staring at their desks, their shoulders hunched, trying to make themselves invisible. "Mia," Summer said. Her voice didn't tremble. It was flat, stripped of the warmth that usually defined her. "Take the rest of the day off. All of you." Mia looked up, her eyes wide with a mixture of pity and anxiety. "Summer, the media pre-interview. We can still call the organizers." "Surely Mr. Stone doesn't have the authority to." "Go home, Mia," Summer repeated gently, though there was an iron curtain in her tone. "Please." When the studio was entirely empty, Summer walked over to the full-length mirror in the corner. For 5 years, this mirror had shown her a woman she believed was elegant. Today, she saw a ghost. The white linen dress she wore was expensive, tailored to perfection, yet it hung on her like a shroud. She looked washed out, faded, as if Ethan's hands had slowly erased her primary colors and replaced them with charcoal sketches. She reached behind her neck, unclasped the thin, delicate platinum chain Ethan had bought her for their 3rd anniversary, and laid it on the cutting table. Beside it, she slid off her wedding band, a plain, unadorned silver loop. He had told her that large diamonds were vulgar, that a true woman of taste preferred simplicity. In reality, Sophia Gray's mother had been a classicist who despised modern jewelry. Summer walked out of the studio and hailed a taxi. She didn't call Ethan's driver. She didn't want the leather-scented silence of his Maybach. When she arrived at the penthouse, the afternoon sun was cutting sharp, geometric shadows across the minimalist living room. Everything was white, gray, and beige. No paintings with bold strokes, no colorful cushions. It looked less like a home and more like an upscale sanatorium. She went to the guest bedroom, where a dusty leather trunk sat at the back of the closet. It was the trunk she had brought with her 5 years ago, before she moved into Ethan's world. She popped the brass latches. Inside lay her past: a vibrant, silk emerald green scarf, a pair of oversized, chunky gold earrings she had bought at a flea market in Florence, a crimson leather jacket, slightly scuffed at the elbows, and at the very bottom, a sketch pad filled with raw, chaotic, beautiful designs, renderings of jewelry that burned with orange, sapphires, deep blue tanzanites, and fiery rubies. She began to pack. She didn't take a single item Ethan had bought her. Not the designer coats, not the custom-made silk pajamas, not the expensive creams that smelled of nothing but cold rain. She packed only what was hers before him. On the vanity in the master bedroom, she left a single sheet of paper. It was a standard divorce agreement, drafted by a lawyer friend she had called from the taxi. She had signed her name in bold, black ink. No alimony requested. No division of assets. She only wanted her studio and her freedom. As she dragged her single trunk toward the door, the housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, watched her with a horrified expression. "Mrs. Stone." "Summer, what are you doing?" "Mr. Stone will be home for dinner." He asked for the steamed cod with no seasoning. Summer paused at the threshold. She looked back at the perfect, sterile apartment. "Tell him to cook it himself," she said softly. "And tell him my name is Summer." Lynn. An hour later, Summer was sitting in a noisy, chaotic Sichuan restaurant 3 blocks from her new, hastily rented loft. The air was thick with the scent of roasted chili peppers, garlic, and Sichuan peppercorns. The floor was slightly sticky, and the decibel level was deafening. She ordered the spiciest hot pot on the menu, along with a plate of garlic, oysters, and spicy crawfish. When the first bite of spicy beef touched her tongue, her eyes watered. Immediately, it was incredibly spicy, a violent shock to a digestive system that had been babbied with boiled vegetables and poached chicken for half a decade. But as the heat bloomed in her chest, a wild, bubbling laugh escaped her throat. She ate until her lips were red and swollen, until her eyes were bright with tears, and until her stomach burned with a beautiful, chaotic heat. For 5 years, she had been told she was delicate. She had been treated like a glass doll that would shatter at the slightest vibration. But as she cracked open a crawfish, her fingers stained with red chili oil, she realized she wasn't glass at all. She was iron. And it was time to melt the mold. Ethan Stone did not like surprises. He liked order, predictability, and the quiet satisfaction of a world that bent to his will. When he stepped into the penthouse at 7 in the evening, the silence felt different. Usually, Summer would be waiting in the living room, a soft, pale figure reading a book or sketching quietly under the dim warmth of a reading lamp. She would rise, take his coat, and ask how his day was in her low, soothing voice. Tonight, the apartment was dark. "Summer?" he called out, his deep voice echoing off the bare walls. No response. He frowned, loosening his tie as he walked into the bedroom. On the vanity, the white paper caught his eye. Beside it lay her wedding band and the platinum necklace. Ethan picked up the divorce paper. His eyes scanned the terms. Irreconcilable. Differences. No division of assets. Summer Lynn. A cold, mocking smile touched his lips. A tantrum, he thought. She's playing a game. He dialed her number. "The number you have dialed is currently unavailable." She had blocked him. He threw the phone onto the bed, irritation sparking in his chest. "Immature," he muttered. He called his assistant Leo. "Find out where Summer is. She's staying at a hotel or a friend's place. Don't interfere, just let me know when she checks in." "Yes, Mr. Stone." Also about the grand exhibition next month. The organizers called back. They were quite confused about the withdrawal. They said Mrs. Stone had worked very hard on her collection. "She's in no state to handle that kind of stress," Ethan said coldly. "The crowd, the press, she hates it. It's for her own good. Keep the withdrawal in place." "Understood, sir." Ethan hung up and walked to the kitchen. Mrs. Gable was standing there looking nervous. "Where's she, Mrs. Gable?" "She left, sir. With a single trunk. She told me to tell you to cook your own dinner." Mrs. Gable hesitated, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And she said her name is Summer Lynn." Ethan's grip on the kitchen counter tightened. The arrogance of her departure irritated him, but beneath the irritation was a strange, unfamiliar prickle of unease. Summer had never raised her voice in 5 years. She had never disobeyed him. She was the perfect wife, gentle, compliant, and quiet. "She'll be back in 3 days," he told himself. "Once her credit cards are frozen, she'll realize how cold the world is outside this house." He went to his study, sat at his desk, and opened his laptop. But as he tried to focus on the financial reports of Stone Enterprises, his gaze kept drifting to the empty space on the sofa where she usually sat with her embroidery. The silence of the room, which he had always insisted upon, suddenly felt heavy. It wasn't the peaceful silence he liked. It felt vacant, empty. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Sophia. "Sophia. Ethan, my chest feels a bit tight tonight. The air in the new gallery is dusty. Are you free to come over?" Ethan looked at the message. Usually he would have called his private doctor and driven over immediately. But tonight, looking at the screen, a strange weariness washed over him. "Ethan, I have a late meeting. I'll have Leo send the doctor. Take some medicine and rest." He set the phone down, closed his eyes, and for some reason, the image of Summer's face from that morning flashed in his mind, the way her eyes had looked when she said, "I'm not allergic to seafood. I love spicy food. I love rubies." He shook his head, dismissing the thought. It was just a hysterical outburst. She was simply jealous of Sophia. Women, he decided, were inherently emotional and irrational. She would learn her lesson. Summer didn't spend her days crying. She didn't have the time. The loft she rented was in the old industrial district, a vast, open space with brick walls, massive windows that let in torrents of natural light, and a wooden floor that creaked with character. It was loud. Street musicians played on the corner below, and the rumble of the subway could be felt every 20 minutes. She loved it. She dragged a massive oak table to the center of the room and covered it with gemstones. For 5 years, she had designed what Ethan called elegant jewelry, thin bands, pale pearls, stones so small they barely caught the light. Now, she unleashed the fire she had kept buried. She bought rough-cut opals that flashed with green and orange fire, deep violet, tanzanites, and emeralds that looked like wild forests. And in the center of her workspace lay the heart of fire, the pigeon blood ruby ring she had locked away from Sophia. "Summer, you're a madwoman," Mia said, stepping into the loft a week later. She had resigned from the old studio the moment she found out Summer had left Ethan. She brought with her two of the most talented young craftsmen from the team. "We have exactly 3 weeks before the grand exhibition in Paris," Mia said, dumping a stack of papers on the table. "And since Ethan Stone officially withdrew your name from the domestic selection, we can't go through the national committee." Summer looked up from her polishing wheel, her face dusted with jeweler's rouge. She was wearing a black tank top and denim shorts, her hair tied up in a messy bun. She looked alive. Her skin had a healthy, sun-kissed glow, and the pale, fragile look was entirely gone. "We don't need the national committee," Summer said, a sharp, confident smile playing on her lips. "I called Julian Vance yesterday." Mia gasped. Julian Vance? The French-Chinese billionaire art patron? Ethan's biggest rival in the luxury market. "The very same," Summer said, wiping her hands on a rag. "He's been trying to acquire a stake in the Stone family's jewelry line for years, but Ethan blocked him. Julian knows talent, and more importantly, he knows how to spite Ethan. I sent him the sketches of my new collection, the Unchained. He called me back in 10 minutes. And Mia's breath was hitched. He's sponsoring me directly as an independent designer under the Vance Group's VIP pavilion. We're going to Paris, Mia, and we are going to show them what happens when you try to put fire in a glass box." The next 3 weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, the smell of soldering metal, the clinking of loose gems, and the roaring energy of creation. Summer worked 16 hours a day, her fingers calloused and her back aching, but she had never felt more energized. Whenever she felt tired, she would look at the Heart of Fire ring. The deep, bloody red of the ruby seemed to beat like a real heart. It was a testament to her survival. During this time, Ethan's assistant, Leo, tried to contact her several times. He left voicemails, sent emails, and even showed up at the loft once. Summer had the building security bar him from the premises. "Tell your boss," she sent in a single, final text message to Leo, "that any further harassment will be met with a restraining order. The divorce papers are with my lawyer. He can sign them, or we can let the public media dissect our marriage in court. His choice." When Ethan received that message from Leo, he smashed his favorite crystal whiskey glass against the study wall. "She's bluffing," he snarled, his eyes dark with a dangerous fury. "She has no money, no backing. The Vance Group? Julian Vance is using her to get to me. She's too stupid to see she's just a pawn." "Mr. Stone," Leo said quietly, sweating under his collar, "the Vance Group has already finalized the registration for the Paris Grand Exhibition. Summer's name is listed as their headline designer for the Contemporary Pavilion. The media is already starting to whisper about why she is representing Vance instead of Stone Enterprises." Ethan stood up, his towering figure casting a long, dark shadow across the room. "Prepare the private jet," he ordered, his voice cold and sharp as glass. "We are going to Paris. I want to see exactly what kind of garbage she has designed, without my guidance." "And Miss Gray?" Leo asked. "She asked if she could accompany you. She says her gallery needs inspiration." Ethan paused. Lately, Sophia's constant presence had begun to grate on his nerves. Her voice, which he once thought was sweet and gentle, now sounded whiny and demanding. Her preference for simple white dresses, which he had forced Summer to copy, now seemed dull and lifeless. But he nodded. "Let her come. I want Summer to see exactly what she threw away." Paris in autumn was a city of gold and gray, but the Grand Palais was a riot of light and color. The opening night of the International Jewelry Exhibition was the most anticipated event of the year in the luxury world. The dome of the Palais was lit with thousands of projection lights, creating a celestial map on the glass ceiling. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, champagne, and the quiet, heavy hum of immense wealth. Ethan Stone walked through the grand entrance, his tailored tuxedo impeccable. Beside him, Sophia Gray clung to his arm. She was wearing a minimalist ivory silk gown with the $60 million diamond bracelet on her wrist. She held her chin high, trying to project the air of a noble lady, but her eyes darted anxiously around the room, intimidated by the sheer scale of the global elite. "Ethan, look at those pieces," Sophia whispered, pointing to a display of large, vibrant emeralds. "They're so loud, so tacky. Don't you think?" Ethan didn't answer. His eyes were scanning the crowd, looking for a familiar, quiet figure in a plain white dress. He expected to find Summer standing in some dark corner, looking lost and regretful, perhaps waiting for him to offer her a way back. Mr. Stone. Over here, please. A flock of international reporters suddenly bypassed the major European brands and rushed toward the VIP pavilion of the Vance Group. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, a wave of excitement rippling through the hall. What is going on there? Sophia frowned, her lips turning down. Ethan walked toward the pavilion, his stride long and commanding. The crowd parted for him, recognizing the titan of the Asian luxury market. When he reached the front of the pavilion, his breath caught in his throat. Standing in the center of the flashing cameras was a woman who looked like a goddess of fire. She wore a backless, floor-length gown of the deepest, richest crimson silk. The fabric clung to her curves, moving like liquid flame as she turned. Her dark hair was styled in elegant, voluminous waves, cascading down one shoulder. Her makeup was bold, her lips painted a dramatic, blood red, her eyes sharp and magnetic. It was summer, but it was a summer he had never seen before. Gone was the timid, quiet girl who shrank from the light. She stood with her shoulders back, her chin tilted up, laughing warmly as she spoke fluent French to a group of European curators. On her neck hung a spectacular collar of rough-cut, fiery opals and rubies that seemed to float on her collarbones like embers. On her right index finger the heart of fire, pigeon blood ruby ring caught the light, flashing with a brilliant, violent crimson. Beside her stood Julian Vance, a handsome, sharp-featured man in his mid-30s. He leaned down, whispering something in her ear, and Summer laughed, a bright, genuine sound that echoed in Ethan's chest like a physical blow. Summer. Ethan breathed, his voice barely audible. Sophia's grip on his arm tightened so hard her knuckles turned white. How could she dress like that? It's so vulgar. And she's with Julian Vance. Ethan didn't hear Sophia. He felt a sudden, suffocating pressure in his chest. The woman standing there was beautiful, breathtakingly, blindingly beautiful. She was the most radiant person in the entire hall, drawing every eye, every camera, every ounce of admiration. And she was his wife. Or she had been. Summer, Ethan said, his voice cutting through the noise as he stepped into the pavilion. The reporters turned, sensing the sudden spike in tension. Summer paused her conversation and turned her head. Her gaze landed on Ethan. There was no fear in her eyes.
No longing, no anger.
There was only a cool, polite indifference that was more devastating than any hatred. Mr. Stone, she said, her voice smooth and clear. I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you preferred simpler settings. Ethan stepped closer, ignoring the cameras. Summer, what is the meaning of this? You belong at home. This circus is not who you are. Julian Vance stepped forward, a polite but mocking smile on his face. Mr. Stone, I believe you are mistaken. This is exactly who she is. A visionary.
A
true artist. Her collection has already been fully acquired by 3 of the biggest museums in Europe tonight. She is the star of the exhibition. Stay out of this, Vance, Ethan snarled, his eyes locking onto Summer.
Summer.
We are leaving.
Now.
Stop this ridiculous game and come back to the hotel.
We
can talk about the divorce papers. I'm willing to overlook this lapse in judgment. Summer looked at him, and for the first time, she felt a profound sense of pity. Ethan, she said softly, her voice carrying over the quieted crowd. You still don't get it, do you? You never looked at me. Not once in 5 years. I gave you everything. Ethan's voice cracked slightly, a rare display of emotion from the stoic billionaire. I protected you. I took care of you. I kept you safe from the noise, from the things that would hurt you. No, Summer said, taking a step toward him. You took care of a ghost. You took care of a list in your notes app. She pointed to Sophia, who was shrinking back under the sudden scrutiny of the
crowd.
You forced me to wear white because she wore white. You kept me in quiet rooms because she was afraid of noise. You fed me tasteless food because she couldn't handle spice. You spent 5 years trying to carve me into Sophia Gray. The crowd gasped. The whispers turned into a roar. The reporters frantically took notes, their cameras flashing rapidly. Ethan's face went pale. Summer, shut up. Don't bring Sophia into this. Why not? Summer laughed, a cold, sharp sound. But here is the funniest part. Ethan, do you want to know the absolute truth? She turned her gaze to Sophia. Sophia, tell him. Tell him about the white dresses. Tell him about the seafood. Tell him about the noise. Sophia's face drained of all color. She shook her head, her voice trembling. Summer, don't do this. Tell him, Sophia, Summer commanded, her voice ringing with absolute authority. Or should I show everyone the messages you sent your friends on Instagram last week? Sophia bit her lip, tears welling in her eyes. She looked at Ethan's pale, rigid face and knew she couldn't lie anymore. Ethan?
I
I only wore white back then because your grandfather was a conservative traditionalist who hated modern fashion, Sophia stammered, her voice shaking. I actually hate white. It makes me look sick. I love neon
colors.
I love designer streetwear. Ethan froze. His heart felt like it had stopped beating. What? And the seafood allergy, Sophia continued, crying now. I'm not allergic to seafood. I hated the way your family's chef cooked oysters. That one night, so I made up an excuse. I love spicy food.
It's be a but.
Every week in New York. She looked down at the $60 million diamond bracelet on her wrist. And this bracelet? I only said I liked simple things because I was trying to seem sophisticated to the media. I actually wanted the ruby necklace. I hate this boring bracelet. Every word Sophia spoke was like a heavy hammer shattering a glass palace. Ethan stood there, paralyzed. For 5 years, he had lived by a scripture. He had guarded a list of preferences like a holy relic. He had controlled Summer's life, suffocated her talent, forced her to eat bland food, and kept her in silent isolation. All to honor the memory of a woman who didn't even exist. He had tortured a living, breathing, loving woman to please a ghost that was nothing but a lie. He turned slowly to Summer. Her crimson dress was blinding. Her rubies were screaming. She was the embodiment of everything he had tried to suppress, and she was magnificent. Summer. Ethan's voice was a broken whisper. He reached out his hand, his fingers trembling.
I
didn't know. Summer stepped back, easily avoiding his touch. She looked at his outstretched hand and then up at his face. You didn't care to know, she said. You didn't love me, Ethan. You didn't even love Sophia. You only loved your own obsession with control. You loved the feeling of being a savior to a fragile, delicate girl. But I was never fragile, and I never needed saving. She turned to Julian Vance and smiled. Shall we go to the after party, Julian? I hear the spicy tuna tartare is excellent. It would be my absolute honor, Julian said, offering his arm. Summer took his arm, her red dress rustling softly as she walked past Ethan.
She
didn't look back. Not once. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. The news of the Stone family's stand-in scandal had dominated the business and luxury headlines for months, causing Stone Enterprises stock to plunge by 15% before stabilizing. Ethan Stone sat in his empty penthouse. The white noise machine on the bedside table was silent. The white linen sheets had been stripped. The apartment was completely empty of Summer's presence. Yet, her ghost seemed to haunt every corner far more than Sophia's ever had. Sophia had left for New York 3 months ago, unable to bear the cold, silent fury that Ethan had directed at her after the Paris exhibition. Ethan had stopped funding her gallery. He had stopped answering her calls. He realized, with a bitter, hollow certainty, that he didn't care about Sophia at all. He had only cared about the memory of a first love, a memory that had turned out to be a fabricated illusion. He opened his phone and clicked on his notes app. The folder My Dearest was still there. He stared at the lines. She doesn't like bright colors. Her clothes should be white. Her taste is light. She absolutely can't touch chili. She's afraid of noise. A tear, hot and heavy, fell onto the screen. He had had a diamond in his hands. A vibrant, passionate, brilliant diamond who had loved him enough to give up her own colors, her own voice, and her own identity just to make him happy. And he had thrown her away to polish a piece of common glass. He deleted the note. The folder vanished. But the silence in the apartment remained, heavy, suffocating, and permanent. In the heart of Milan, a new flagship boutique had just opened. The sign above the door read, in bold, elegant gold lettering, Summerlin. Inside, the display cases were filled with jewelry that defied tradition, bold, chaotic, beautiful pieces that celebrated the untamable fire of life. Rubies, opals, emeralds, and sapphires clashed and harmonized in breathtaking designs. Summer stood by the window, looking out at the bustling Italian street.
She wore
a stunning, emerald green silk blazer, her hair catching the bright morning sun. Her phone buzzed. It was an email from the International Jewelry Association, confirming her nomination for Designer of the Year. She smiled, a warm, genuine expression of quiet satisfaction. Mia walked in, carrying 2 cups of espresso and a box of spicy Italian pastries. Congratulations, boss. We're officially sold out of the Phoenix collection. Summer took her coffee, her eyes bright with the promise of the future. This is just the beginning, Mia, she said, taking a bite of the pastry, enjoying the sharp, beautiful kick of cinnamon and chili. The dream was over, and her real life had finally begun.